It's time for the Daly Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Daly Planet podcast, your weekly podcast about movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Freeman. Matt, how is it going today?
Pretty good, Scott. I'm in a good mood. I just watched the first good episode of a TV show that I used to enjoy.
What TV show is that, Matt?
Oh, it was Game of Thrones.
Wow, a good episode of Game of Thrones? I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For new listeners, we have a complicated relationship with this show, which I'm sure we'll get into.
We do, and we have as a special guest on this podcast our resident Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire expert and maester of many chains. Or links. I don't know. I don't know how that works. James Gentry. James, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello, boys. Thanks again for having me back.
Of course.
Let's knock out number 7.
Yeah, so
Good
we are
stuff.
here to talk about season 7 of Game of Thrones. It just finished an hour ago or so. So we are coming right off of our initial impressions of this final episode and this season as a whole. We're not going to do news this time because we have so much Game of Thrones to talk about. We have a whole season's worth to distill in an hour podcast. So let's just jump right into it. For those of you that, as Matt said, that are new, last year we did an episode by episode kind of written conversation between the three of us that we posted to the Daly Planet, and we were pretty hard on the show. And I think we kind of decided that to do those episode by episode recaps and to be this negative would just not be any fun for people. So we didn't do it this season. But we do have a very complicated relationship. So before we get into the details, I want to go around the digital table and get both of you guys' overall impressions on season 7 of the show, starting with you, Gentry.
Yeah, sure. Overall, I guess if I were rating this show on a scale of 1 to 5, sadly, except for this episode, probably give it like a 1.5 stars type of thing.
Oh, damn.
Maybe 2.
Damn.
Well, the thing is like I accepted a long time ago that the show was, had deviated pretty far off from the books, which is totally fine. I was very much enjoying. I did enjoy a lot about the first, 4.5, seasons pretty much. And then I think it just got to a place where I was like, okay, they're going to make new story, which was fine. But unfortunately, I think with this season and maybe parts of the last 2 seasons, the writing just got really weak and they started to not only, forget the books at all, but even stuff that was kind of coming up in some of the previous seasons, getting a little bit lazy on their references and changing things and probably not even knowing that they're changing things and kind of just doing it all at the expense of we need to start wrapping it up, or at least what it feels like. Continuing kind of this, action-y type of like insertion of random, these random little adventures and sequences. Yeah. And, the visuals are great as always, but it's just like I don't really want to watch a video game. This isn't like just a cutscene for me. I want some meaningful, kind of like thematic engagements between some of these characters that have actually gone through quite a bit. But I guess the season didn't really seem to reflect that, and a lot of stuff seemed forced. A lot of stuff seemed unnecessary. I would really just, kind of like what we mentioned in jumping onto this pod is pretty much all I needed was this last episode in this season. Or maybe even just like chopping it up into like 4 mega episodes to where you can kind of focus on a certain theme or like a certain pair of characters, just kind of change it up completely. Shit, I would have even been down for something like completely different for that. Yeah. But instead it was just season 7 hey, that's pretty cool to, pretty cool looking, or, fan fiction, or however you want to say it.
I think, hey, that's pretty cool is a good distillation of everything that this season was. And I think, Matt, you'd probably agree with that. What was your, overall general impressions on season 7 of Game of Thrones?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm wondering if I'm quite as negative as that, actually, because like my byline for this whole season has been that I've liked everything except the stupid shit.
But there was a lot of stupid shit in this season.
But there's a lot of stupid shit, and like, so like some episodes, almost every episode of the season, actually, I've like been sitting through it, and like I'll be smiling and like being like, oh, that was a good character moment, that was a good character interaction. That felt genuine, that felt real, like that didn't feel like the unearned sort of like just superficial moves that you sometimes see them making. And then of course every episode would also have like at least one storyline where it just felt very forced and like they're going for the cool badass complex plotting moment instead of the authentic character moment that I know they're capable of, because they did it very well in this last episode. Like Gentry said, this last episode contained so much of the important plotting from the whole season that you could have almost had, maybe a couple of episodes condense all of the important things that happened in the rest of the season, and then just have this episode, and that could have been the amount of screen time that they allotted to this amount of story, or they could have left a lot of this just completely out, honestly.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I think, it's tough, because I think this show, I don't think it's a bad show. And I think it's because when it's clicking, when everything's working, when everything's coming together the way it should, it is a sight to behold. And I think that's why we tend to get so down on it when it fails to get there, when it does stuff that doesn't make any sense, when it's like when you're watching an episode just shaking your head going, what the fuck is going on? Because on the other side, maybe 5 minutes from now, there's just magic being put on television. And that's why it's so frustrating, because it's just like, why can't you be at that level throughout the episode? Why can't you make your character decisions? Why can't you make your plot decisions in a way that keeps you at that level of, look, these are characters bouncing off each other. These are important emotional conversations happening. These are the political intrigue that we love about the show. And it's just like, it wasn't there. And the craziest thing to me, until this episode, the craziest thing to me was, I'm sitting on Twitter after the show has ended, and I'm looking at people tweet, "Oh my God, best episode ever! Oh my God, this is the best season of the show," and I don't know what to do. Because I'm just like, are you people, like, are you watching the same thing I am? Is this like, is dragons melting people the reason you came to the show? Because like we got a lot of that too. Is like, this is what the show has been building to this entire time, and I just like, do you like this for the same reason that I do? And maybe the answer is no. Maybe the answer is everything that I liked about this show is the stuff that we saw in this episode, but not the stuff that we saw in the rest of the season. And maybe that's what everyone else is coming to the show for. Maybe they just want to see dragons melt people and fly around and fight undead creatures, and that be really cool and exciting. I guess that's just not what Game of Thrones was for me.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like I understand why people are reacting to it that way. So like let's just take maybe like one microcosm of that, and we can talk about that, and that'll maybe help us segue into the episode.
Yeah, sure.
So like, for example, I would guess that a lot of people were super psyched about this final the end of Littlefinger, which and I'm not saying I wasn't. Actually, it was a great scene, and it actually, like, it was very satisfying and everything, but the getting there was not very deft. It relied on certain characters not acting consistently or just acting stupidly. I'm thinking specifically of like how Arya and Sansa were sort of being played off each other, but then at some point they realized the con, and it just like it could have you don't really fully buy it as much as you should, but because you have all this momentum of wanting to see Littlefinger get his comeuppance, it doesn't bother you so much in that moment. But it's like the least economical storytelling in this entire show has been the Sansa Arya Littlefinger like plot for the last, I don't know how many episodes has it been going, 2 or 3?
Yeah, I think it's really been. I think Arya got to Winterfell in episode 3, I think, and this was episode 7, so 4 episodes. And the crazy thing is, like, everything in the season moved so fast. We jumped from place to place,
right,
really quickly. We were jumping all around the map. We were doing things like a plot line started in one episode and ended in that same episode. But we have this Arya Sansa Littlefinger thing that just drags through the season. And it's not even really completely, totally clear what Littlefinger's trying to do at all. Like, I guess if you squint, you can kind of see that he wants Sansa to become queen and basically betray Jon and take over. But then Arya comes, so he has to have her get rid of Arya in this really convoluted, and it's never totally clear what he wants in that moment. And then it's never clear, like Matt said, when they figured it out. And Matt, you and I talk about this a lot, about withholding information from the audience for a dramatic reveal. And that's what this was. It was very obvious to me that both Arya and Sansa knew what they were going to do when they both walked into that room. But it was withheld from us just because that would make it fun and dramatic, but not logically. Like it didn't make sense to hide that from us, except for that purpose.
And I still wasn't surprised, but like, at the exact moment when she says like you stand accused of treason and all that, and then I was like, and I think I said out loud, Littlefinger. She's gonna say Littlefinger. She's gonna say, and then she says Littlefinger. I'm like, yep.
Lord Baelish.
Yeah.
It didn't even like hit that as a reveal to me.
Right.
Like the music, like there was no musical cue to that. There was no like buildup of tension. It just kind of happened, and you're just like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really think he would just kind of be like doing his like little shadow lean thing. I was like, oh, I guess it's just going to be, the 10th or whatever time of him doing that. And then, now it's actually like completely catching him off guard. But,
well, yeah, and there's the fact that I guess that was just for Sansa's pleasure, but to create that scene in a way that fools Littlefinger is pointless. Like you could literally just call him to the Great Hall and just say, we're charging you with this stuff. Like the misdirection and the reveal was for the benefit of the audience. It didn't make any character sense for anyone to be behaving in that kind of way. Unless you just want to say that Sansa was just purposely fucking with Peter just to be a bitch to him.
Yeah.
I think the season could be subtitled "For the Benefit of the Audience."
Which, yeah, I mean, like, and that's television, it's entertainment. But, and I think when I look at the big complaints of the season, the jumping around, the teleporting, as people call it, where people move across the map in seemingly instantaneous, even though obviously, yes, we know time's passing. No one that talks about teleporting actually think that time's not passing. It's just time isn't anchored to anything in the show anymore. So you're never really clear how much is passing for who, and for who is it not passing. Like, it's just kind of nebulous and in the air. But I think the reason why people pick up on these nitpicks is because something in the show feels different to them. Something feels weird. Something feels off kilter. It doesn't feel like the show it was before. So they're trying to find why that is. And one of the most visually obvious things is people just kind of travel where they want to. And the show just kind of says, okay, we're done with the scene. Now we're going to go to this scene, and now we're going to go to this scene. And there's no, it doesn't feel like an expansive world anymore. And I understand that. Like, I get that at a certain point in a story, you don't need to see a person travel across the land for 3 weeks. I don't need that, but I want it to be anchored in something. I want to feel like geography is taken under consideration when people make decisions, when they make plans. And I think that the point that people finally lost it with that was last episode, where the bird flies 2,000 miles in 3 hours or whatever, and then the dragon flies that same amount of time in an hour or whatever. And but I've been complaining about that the entire season, and I think it just, for most people, it just finally pushed them to the brink in that last episode where it just lost it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with like macro versus micro nature of plotting. So like I was trying to look this up. I'm not gonna have time to really look it up, but like Tyrion like consolidating his power as the Hand in King's Landing in season 1 or 2, like that was all like one location. Like whole episodes could be spent on like micro level interactions between a small number of characters as they're like jockeying for one-upsmanship, and you're seeing these tense relationships and dramatic reversals are happening, but they're all very like small stakes dramatic reversals. But that like you care about that a tremendous amount. I mean, I think we've talked plenty about the fact that it's easier to care more about small stakes because you can actually empathize and connect with small stakes.
Yeah.
And now we're having this thing where there's none of that at all. There's none of this jockeying on the micro level for like small personal stakes. It's almost all about, we have to defeat the army of the dead and nothing else matters. And and like between
a term for the Tolkien, but
yeah,
not even done well.
Right, it is like Tolkien because Tolkien was the master of small scale character interactions not mattering at all, and it all being about the massive plot. And now that's where we are, where everybody the reason people are moving between cities every episode is that they care more about showing the chess pieces moving across the board in preparation for the last battles, and they care about the actual evolution of personal relationships.
Yeah, I think that's fantastically well put. And I think it's actually funny because it becoming Tolkien is exactly the opposite of what George R. R. Martin would ever want this to be. Because George kind of wrote this fantasy series in criticism of Tolkien, kind of, where he basically was saying, Tolkien seems to think that when the right people are in charge, everything's going to be fine, and the savior of the world is through the predestined royalty, which Martin says that's bullshit, and the little people are always going to suffer under these kind of regimes. Like, it's always going to suck, and he's interested in talking about those smaller stakes and what this kind of jockeying for power does to everyday people and how it destroys them. And it's shifted away from that. And I think one of the difficulties of, and why I think Martin still hasn't released these 2 damn last books, is because as you come to this conclusion where it seems to be what we're doing is setting it up as everyone in Westeros versus the Night King and the others and the undead, how do you switch to that final conflict in a way that doesn't lose what the theme of Martin's work was? And I think that's what he's having the most trouble, how to make that switch. And the show just said, we're going to do it. And it was just kind of like, we're done with that other stuff. And here it's now big epic fantasy, final battle, predestined. Like, Jon Snow becomes this perfect everyman who is everything. Like, he's perfect at everything he does. He's the king. He's the one true king. He's the Lord Commander. Like, he's got everything for him. And it's just, I don't know it. And I don't want to insult it because it's not the books, but it just becomes a less interesting story to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they really they spread themselves way too thin by going like whatever, whether it's like lazy writing or they decided to like take some shortcuts in terms of the map and all this like distance geography. They didn't have to do that. I mean, at this point it has not really connected in any. It's beyond what's currently happening in the story, so you have so much freedom, and they basically like took a little bit of everything and then stretched that little bit out into these really thin strips of story and then laid them out nicely and added some like really cool action and just left it. But they didn't have, they could have done like a whole first half of season, 3.5 episodes of maybe, screw it, like put most of the group, even leave like the ladies of Winterfell kind of out of it, just kind of, that story, like just leave it behind. And then get the whole story, kind of this conflict between Dany's group and Cersei's group, and position them around King's Landing, and then make some like little subplots into these really major decisions that all these people have to make in terms of whose side are they on. Because I mean, like you look at all these like inserted kind of callbacks and references to stuff that happened early in the season, and you finally get these like moments. It's almost like mistimed. They're just really late, or maybe they're not fully fleshed out. And it ends up just being like a character like sitting randomly in the back and getting like his 10 seconds to like talk and then disappearing. And if you just kept them all close and from the get-go, like, okay, Dany lands in Dragonstone, moves on to the mainland, like decides what she wants to do with King's Landing. There's this area between King's Landing and the Riverlands that's like Harrenhal, like this whole area would have been perfect to just have a little bit more, a little more depth into these different strings that have been pulled in the past and have now coming into fruition. But instead they decide to stretch it out all the way from Old Town to like Euron's shenanigans to the Winterfell story to the Wall, and it gets completely unhinged. And so nothing feels like, I don't feel fulfilled at all, because the stuff that was supposed to like pay off, the way they got there just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so hey, and that's
guys, what happened to Dorne?
Dorne is gone.
So the sand snakes are captured, and Dorne just ceases to exist.
Yeah, well, you see,
all of Dorne's armies are gone.
I mean, since she was obviously the rightful ruler of Dorne, as the concubine of the brother of the ruler of the
prince. Sorry, he was the prince. Yeah.
Now that she's in captivity, obviously Dorne is just going to do nothing.
They're just done. Yeah. And like, it's so stupid.
I mean, but I'm glad, because they screwed up the Dorne story so badly that I'm just like, okay, good, just cauterize it.
But this is what makes it start to feel like less of an actual world and just like a series of points on the way to the end, is when stuff like that happens and you're just like, well, that doesn't, what? Where did they go? And like, and I, like, you understand, like, coming into the season, the big problem was Dany is here now. Dany has 3 dragons. Dany has an entire army. She has all these people on her side. She has the Greyjoys. She has Highgarden. Like, it's everyone, and Cersei's just fucked. So the show had to like bend over backwards to give Cersei an even playing field in this, or else like they would have just ran over them. So they had to invent this, oh, you can't use your dragons and you can't use your army because they're foreigners, and then you'll turn everyone against you, which is I think we all agree is Tyrion just like feeling guilty and like trying to save people because he's committed to Dany, but not like he doesn't want his people to die. He doesn't want his family to die. He said as much in this episode, but I don't know if they hit that point enough throughout the season. I don't know if he was punished enough for actually making stupid decisions rather than just, oh no, things went wrong. But yeah, like, so these weird things keep happening because the writers wrote themselves into a corner, and they had to have this stuff happen that seems so weird and unnatural.
Yeah. I'm wondering. I mean, it's almost an impossible problem, because I keep thinking about the books and how the books are their own weird thing. Like, the books are very, I don't know if people who haven't read them appreciate how weird, like just weird they are. So like, right, like at the current time in the books, like Tyrion is fairly unlikable. He's like
he's a
really
drunk alcohol. He's like an asshole drunk.
He's terrible to people.
Yeah.
He's very flawed. He's very flawed.
Yeah.
Daenerys has basically completely failed as like the ruler of all the cities in Essos.
Yeah.
That has been a completely failed Iraq style like clusterfuck.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been, and I think we're supposed to be just like interpreting her as being like, all right, I'm just gonna be like whoever the first Targaryen king was, and just give up basically. And she, on top of that, she's a lot more flawed. She's a lot more like, I guess I'll just cut to the chase, which is that in the book, like at the point where we're at now, we're pretty low on sympathetic characters. Like we've almost retired John. Like even if he comes back to life, which he probably will, he's like going to be retired as like a main character, and you're like moving on to the second string characters like John Connington and all these characters that aren't even in the show. And you kind of get the sense that if this wasn't George R. R. Martin's plan, it's his plan now. Is he's basically like, there's no, like, you're not going to get the triumphal moment where Jon Snow battles the Night King with a sword and slays him, and then dies in Daenerys' arms as she gives birth to their child. It's gonna be something really weird and unexpected, and then like it's gonna be, it's just going to be something really weird and unexpected and out of left field, because that's just how he does things. And the showrunners realized they couldn't do that.
Well, and I don't even know if it's they couldn't do it. It's that they like, so for 4-5 seasons, they had detailed books. They had George working closely with them in their script writing process. And then from that point on, it was probably just like 2 pages of notes on what George wants to do with the rest of the story. So like, it's probably stuff like the Hodor moment where he just wrote, oh, there's this moment with Hodor, hold the door. So like he told them that, and they had to work that into the plot somehow. He probably like, there's probably going to be an ice dragon in the books at some point. Like that's probably going to happen, but it was probably just a line of note written on a paper where George said, ice dragon. So they had to say, okay, well, we got to get an ice dragon in it. So we need this convoluted, ridiculous plot for Dany to get up there. So instead of being able to weave this intricate, complex as shit, like people interacting and playing off each other and all this stuff that the books are so well known for, they just have these little beats and no guidance on how to get from them. So their solution is to just jump into it and just go and just literally get from them. Yeah. Like, we're going to invent a reason to get to that beat, and then we're just going to do it. And it loses something, and it just doesn't link up to the style of writing that D&D have when they don't have that specific stuff to go off of.
Yeah, that's true. I agree.
And it's just not very good, though. And that's the thing. Like, the writing, like, I'm sorry, but there's certain shows that we've all watched where it does hit on a lot of the beats, regardless of what season it is or at what point, or whether it's adapted from a story or not. Like, this shit got a little bit weak, and it just hasn't. They had so much potential to do their own thing and do it well, and not necessarily have to get super complex like the books. And I think it just kind of fell flat because, I don't know, there's just I mean, you're right. Like, it's so hard to do with this many characters, but still, though, I guess I just expected a little bit more from kind of the quality and the amount of money that went into this production. Because it looked nice, but
Well, yeah, and that's one thing I want to make sure. Like, the show is beautiful. It is one of the most well-made pieces of television I've ever seen. It's usually very well directed, although I think episode 6, the action sequence in episode 6 was terribly directed, which was kind of shocking to me how bad it was compared to what is normally high caliber, like beautiful set direction, like great CG effects, great action directing, all this stuff. The show is beautiful and well shot and well made. But yeah, the writing is where everything falls down. And I guess we should just jump into. We haven't really jumped too far into the specifics of this episode because and I think it works as a good place to talk about because this episode is the culmination of all the arcs. So we could talk about the parts we liked and why we liked them and why that failed to be set up to that in an interesting way, if that makes sense. So
yeah, sure.
So let's talk about John and Danny in this episode because this is the big one. These are our two protagonists now, I guess, in the show. These are our heroes, and they're gonna save the world together after banging, even though they're related.
Yeah.
So my biggest complaint about these two is they have no chemistry at all. And the show, like there's the first moment where you see any kind of actual hint that they're attracted to each other is episode 6 when Danny's like worried about him on the wall and then he's lying in bed and she goes to comfort him. Every moment until that point is other characters telling our characters that they like each other. It's like Davos going, "Hey, I saw you looking at her," and Tyrion going, "Hey, you kind of like him, huh?" And we don't actually see any of that. We're just told it from these other characters, and it's just so weird and so like you have John touching the dragon, which I guess is supposed to be chemistry, because she's like, "Oh, you're touching the dragon," and I don't know. Do you guys think there was chemistry between these two?
Yeah.
No.
I don't really. I mean, go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
I was like, there were so many parts during this episode in particular, and I think last episode too, where I was like, are we supposed to be? Is he gonna lean in and kiss her here, and then they're gonna have a passionate kiss? Because I'm just gonna cringe so hard if that happens, because that's not being. It's not time for that to happen, and it still wasn't time for that to happen when we saw their naked bodies. Like, you're just like, what? Yeah. What? I mean, it's like the Plinkett thing. Like, I guess they read the script,
right? I mean, that's what it was. I think this is now time in the show for them to get together, so it happens, and it doesn't matter if there's time to actually set up. We get very few scenes of the two of them just by themselves bonding or like sharing personal information or like learning about each other. None of that really ever happens.
Yeah. Guys, look, we were kind of cheated in this whole thing because like John actually gets time with Ygritte. They actually get to flesh that out over, basically 2 seasons, almost 2 full seasons. Right. And that's what it takes is communication, and this, like, you just can't do it. There's just no way. So, and even like physically, you don't really see it much either, because John's just kind of like, what does Jamie call him, like the dull Stark boy or whatever. Like, yeah, he's just kind of like a dull, like everyman, like you said, doing all the right things. And it's kind of just like him and Danny looking at each other. And Danny has never really had. I mean, God, I guess Drogo maybe was like her kind of like moment where she actually felt human and like felt, like that she had a good bond with like another male. Hasn't really happened with any other guys.
Well, and I think
and so I feel like this just wasn't it either.
Yeah, but Emilia Clarke has also chosen to play Daenerys in this very rigid, stoic, like she's always giving a speech type way. So you don't ever really see emotion on her face. You
kind
don't
of like aloof until she like starts speaking.
Yeah, and her voice doesn't really inflect very much. She's always very like, it's just very that commanding level. There's very little actual vulnerability there. Like even when her dragon died in the last episode, like she gives you switch to a reaction shot of her just looking like mildly surprised and concerned, but like you never really feel like, oh my God, like these are supposed to be your children and you just lost one of your children. And there's never a scene at all. Like, I mean, I guess John says like, "I'm sorry about your dragon," and that's it. And then we just move on from that. And
we lost a lot of the emotional beats in this season.
Yeah.
I think vulnerability is the perfect word, Scott, because neither of them show any vulnerability because they have no vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And they're actually very boring characters. And part of that is because they're monarchs. Whereas, like, when John could credibly get into a relationship, he was like the lowest possible person on the totem pole of life. He was a black brother who was being held captive by the wildlings and pretending to be a double agent, and at constant risk of death. And like I said, the stakes were much smaller, and so you could buy the vulnerability and the intimacy that he had with Ygritte, and it's same with Dany and Drogo. You could actually, she was basically property, and she sort of like flipped that situation on its head in a special way, and it was very
kind of feel.
Yeah, she took her agency back, and it was a really wonderful character moment.
Yeah, and she was not a boring character, and she was actually acting a lot. Like, her acting was better because her character was better, and I'm not giving her a pass on her acting this season because I think it could have been like salvaged, but her character was a more interesting character, and it's always easier to, I don't know, I'm not an actor, but I surmise that it's easier to act when your character is actually compelling. So you have these two boring characters being played by actors who don't really have any particular flair for bringing out what's interesting about them, and this is what we get.
Yeah. And God, John isn't really a character anymore because he has no flaws. There's nothing, like, even you could say in this episode, his refusal to give an oath to Cersei that would have been a lie, was his character flaw. Like, that's the Ned Stark character flaw where you're honest to a fault and it fucks everyone over. But even in that moment, it doesn't actually punish John for that, because first of all, they convince Cersei to go to support them anyway. And then second of all, she was never gonna do it anyway. So like, he doesn't get punished for his flaw. There's no learning happening here. And you could argue the entire point of him getting killed was for him to come to that same realization that Ned Stark did, that this doing the right thing and honest to a fault in this world is going to get you killed, as it literally did him, but then he's resurrected and is just the same person he always was. So there's no character change there. There's no learning. He's just the same person, and he's always right. He's always doing the right thing. And there's nothing there. There's just nothing. And he's such a boring character. And I wish, like, cause like in the early books, he was my favorite. I loved him so much. And it's just like, there's nothing anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say, like, in the first couple of seasons, you actually at least get him kind of, at least developing a somewhat as kind of, being torn or between, saving his father or staying with the Watch, or being a leader, not being a leader, deciding to do the wildlings. Now most of his stuff now is just kind of, oriented around action. And they kind of just set him up as that guy. And Dany, I want to say at some point in the last, maybe when we started doing this podcast, like 2 years ago or so, in terms of doing like the Game of Thrones recaps, I always said, like, there's multiple levels of Dany that everybody gets to see in her point of view, and kind of that difference between the girl who's, this new, politician who has to rule and play the game and kind of pretends to be dumb, but is actually pretty smart when she's talking to other officials of like all different places. And then the other Dany, who's just kind of genuinely naive or maybe ignorant, who has like great conversations with, people like Barristan and things like that. And I think that kind of failed to translate, kind of the moment where she's always saying, please, sir, I am but a child who knows nothing of war. And she kind of expounds on that and then uses it to kind of, trick these supposedly more experienced officials and things like that. And they just don't bring any of that. They don't really give us opportunity to use that, to like play these little games, whether they're real or joking, as a, and instead she just kind of stares and, maybe slightly, raises her voice or her tone. And then it's just back to like, oh no, but Dany's good. And that's just that.
It feels like they're afraid to give our main characters flaws. Because like even with Danny, you can see where they tried to do it a little bit. You like there's this whole undercurrent of, are you going to be just like your father? Are you just like the Mad King?
Right.
You used your dragons and you burned these people, and there's these two characters in the Tarleys that you burned, and you shouldn't have done that, and that was the wrong thing to do, and it's scary. And the show telegraphs that. It's like you're supposed to be concerned in this moment that like, oh, is she slipping into this Mad Kingness? But it's afraid.
Well, it didn't help that Marine was like seen as successful in the show. Well, but it was like a victory, and it was like, oh, nothing bad happened in the end.
And it's afraid to commit to that though. It like paints that and says like, oh, you're supposed to be concerned. You don't know if she's going a little Mad King or Mad Queen over here,
right?
But then it doesn't commit to it. It walks back on it and just has her have a conversation with Tyrion where they argue again and they go back and forth, and then she ignores him. Like in the last in episode 6, like they're fighting and he says basically, you can't go north. You're too valuable. You can't do that. And she goes, no, like I'm done listening to you, and goes north anyway. And that, I guess, like, does the show want us to think that's the right decision? Because she saved all our characters and she got the White home, but also her dragon just got conquered, which is what makes the wall fall down. So like, I don't know, like it doesn't want to fully commit to these characters are making mistakes and doing the wrong thing and getting punished for it. And Tyrion is that same way, that he seemingly is just wise advisor guy who doesn't have any faults. If he does have a fault, it's that he cares about his family, which is like just a cop out. Like it's just like it's not a real character flaw at all.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we've actually, we spend almost all of our time with like a much less flawed version of all of the better characters. Like Jaime was detestable for like 2 seasons, and he's just been like everyone's favorite for the whole show. Yeah, basically. We've sort of gotten really confused about what exactly is going on with Arya, but she's fundamentally like a good, likable person now, and not a psycho child soldier like she should be.
Yeah, well, that's when you celebrate this little girl brutally murdering people, it just confuses me. Like, what does the show want us to believe about Arya? Because like you could see when they were trying to do this Sansa Arya thing, where they're trying to show that Arya has become this cold, calculated assassin now, and is like, we as the audience go, is that good? Is like, are we supposed to be happy about that? But then at the end of the season, it's like, oh, she's with her sister, and yay, they're on the same team, and yay, everybody, yay. And it's like, what is the show saying with that character? And I don't know. I don't know if there's an answer.
I don't know if they know what they're saying with any of their characters actually. True. And that's the problem, is you can only really say, I don't know, this is probably overstating it, but it's hard to say things with characters unless those characters have flaws, and the drama is them struggling with their flaw. And or struggling with themselves, right? I mean, the core of drama is like each person struggle with themselves, not other people. It's their own issues with themselves that are exposed through their interactions with other people, and we obviously did get some of that toward the beginning of the show when it was still George R. R. Martin, and now I don't think we ever. I'm trying to think like the closest thing we got recently was this conversation between Jon and Theon, and I don't want to like be so negative because like I actually enjoyed the conversation, but then when I was reflecting on it, I was like, it was just so on the nose. It was like we get at this point that Theon's struggle is with his identity, and that he's actually a really unfortunate person, that he was, basically a hostage in Winterfell and was treated like sort of well, but also never felt at home and always felt like a second-class citizen, and it was really hard for him. And it's like, okay, so I guess I'm glad that he has this heartfelt moment where he talks about this with Jon, but also it's like, here's the thesis statement of my character, Jon.
Yeah, I see and in the interest of not, and the funny thing is we've been so negative so far, and what we started the episode with saying this was the best episode of the season. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right that is on the nose, but like we also have to realize that Game of Thrones has become mainstream, entertainment for everyone type of things, and maybe that kind of nuance is just not the type of thing that the show wants to operate in anymore. So I'm okay with that scene being on the nose. I really liked it. I really liked the two characters. I really liked that it's Jon, who also kind of always felt like the outsider, who was the bastard of the group, comforting Theon or giving Theon a little taste of what he wants, which is a place to belong in this moment. I really did enjoy that. It's a really great cap on a long road for Theon, where now he's going to finally like find his strength and be a human being again. It was really well done. And I just wish that we had more of that in this show.
Yeah.
I'll take that at this point, over just, them not saying anything at all and just completely forgetting to like,
right. Like,
but some are, and some are strikes and, are swing and a miss, type of, exchange. But there have been, there was a couple of good random, rare kind of like moments where I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Sure. Why not? The Jorah and Jon, I guess, like beyond the wall. Sure. I'll take that.
Yeah. That was,
I could have liked a little bit more.
It would have been really funny if Jon offered the sword to Jorah and Jorah was just like, thanks. And just took it. I would have really enjoyed that.
Right. I think my favorite scene from this episode was the Tyrion Cersei conversation in private.
Yes. Love that.
Anytime Peter Dinklage gets to like actually dig into some dialogue, it's great. And of course, the whole scene was great. In terms of acting, in terms of like the back and forth of it, the tiny little moments like pouring the wine,
drinking 2 full glasses of wine.
Yeah, I'm still convinced that she's not even pregnant. Like
I think she really is. Well, I think one of the more subtle things is that he drinks a full glass of wine, pours another one, and puts it next to her, and she doesn't take it. And that's supposed to be one of the hints towards her being pregnant, I guess. But
that's true. But so I guess part of my reasoning there is that it's just too convenient as like a way of manipulating Jaime, and also too convenient that she successfully manipulates Tyrion here, who's usually pretty good at not being manipulated. And she uses that as the thing to make him think that she's genuine.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think the important part, and I think the reason you like this scene, and I agree with you, Matt, is there's real vulnerability here. This is a very emotional scene. This is two people that have hated each other their entire lives, but Tyrion, like, as much as he hates Cersei, like, has always wanted her to think of him as family. And he's getting very vulnerable. She's very vulnerable. Like, we haven't seen Cersei like be emotional very much in this season because she's just kind of turned all that off. But like when he starts bringing, like when he says, I loved those kids, and she's like, don't say that to me. Like that, there's real emotion in those scenes. And we get to see these two actors do things that they haven't really gotten to do very much in the season. And it's so great. It's so good.
When she's struggling with like basically whether or not she should tell the mountain to kill him. That was like the most intense performance from her from like the whole season, or the whole show, maybe. I don't know.
And him too, because like like in that moment, you think when he walks up to the mountain and says, do it, his voice cracks a little, and you get like, he honestly doesn't know. He basically thinks, like, in Tyrion's head, I think he's like,
it's a flip of a coin at that point.
If I can't convince her, then we're all dead anyway. Therefore, I might as well just die here. And he's kind of like just settled with that's going to happen to him. And you can feel that in Dinklage's performance. It's so good. And it's just like, it's the Tyrion that I've been wanting for so long. I think everyone, like, the show caught on to the fact that everyone loved second season Tyrion, the plotting, the planning, the being the great advisor, brilliant. And they tried to replicate that in his advisory of Daenerys, but there's just something missing there. There's this feeling of, and I guess it was because like when Tyrion was in King's Landing, is like he's trying to do the right thing and everyone's against him. And so it's very personal for him. It's like those stakes are there. But when he's just advising for Daenerys, it's just like him giving well-written speeches that either work or don't work. And then we just move on to the next scene. So that emotionality of him is something that's been missing, and it was here. And it was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along that line, I think the Jaime Cersei scene was pretty good also, where he finally says, "Fuck you, I can't do this."
Yep.
Was wonderful.
Yeah, that was another like really satisfying thing that we've been waiting for quite a long time. Like just basically waiting for him to man up and leave her. It went well. Although I was a bit confused because she like makes one of those inscrutable gestures to Clegane, and I was like, oh, did she just tell him to kill Jaime? And then Jaime walks by and I'm like, oh
yeah,
okay.
That was definitely confusing. And she had the same kind of hesitation, except I thought she kind of gave him like the nod to Jaime, and I was like, oh shit, does that mean he's gone? But
yeah. But the way they reacted, it was kind of clear that wasn't it, but I was also like, what? Yeah. I don't know. It could have been. It was that's a super minor thing, really, overall, that I threw me off.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that whole scene was incredible. Like the "I don't believe you" moment. And then at the end, like this is what I mean by how well directed the show is. Like the moment at the end when he's leaving the castle and he covers up his golden hand, and it's like the perfect symbolic way of saying like he's distancing himself from his name and his identity. Like he's not the Lannister anymore. Like he covers up the golden hand. It's just this wonderful moment of show don't tell. And like, I think the show misses that sometimes. And like with Daenerys and Jon, like the show missed the show don't tell. And that was this wonderful little moment. And it's just like, you see that the show can do this and you're just like, why don't you do this all the time?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
I mean, they still like doing like pretty different amount of writers per season. Like, is that still a thing?
Yeah, I think D&D wrote. They're the main writers on a lot in this season.
Okay, because that didn't
more
used to
so
be the
than
case.
normal. Yeah.
In the early seasons, they were actually pretty like non-D&D-ish writers for the most part.
Now, of course, the way writers' rooms work. Usually it's a team effort, but someone gets assigned main story credits, and that's just how it works. But this one I noticed had their names on it a lot more than others.
Yeah.
There's one thing about the show is like, it's almost, I don't want to say impossible, but like you can always nitpick things, and something and I do, and it's fun too. But like it occurs to me that like Sam shows up in this episode, so you're like, okay, so Sam has traveled from the Citadel to Winterfell, and either still doesn't know his family is dead, which is not credible, or found out off screen
and doesn't care.
And doesn't care, which is also unsatisfying. But it's like, okay, well that's the kind of nitpick where I'm like, yeah, okay, man, what did you want? Did you want like an inserted scene where the whole purpose of the scene was to give Sam this information, and it would feel really clunky? Like you've got so many characters, you've got so much going on, you've got so many intertwining things, that unless you just want more,
you can fit that in. And I mean, I think
I think
doable.
They already had,
if anything,
they already had the scene. They had a scene where all the maesters are sitting around the table and going like,
right,
well, it's a good thing we didn't tell him his family died. And I was like, you could have just in that scene told him his family died. Like you could have just put it there. And then you see Sam have to make this choice between going to be with his mother and sister and choosing the war. And his, like, you could have made this real choice for him, this dramatic choice that meant something. But instead we just kind of move past that and it doesn't mean anything. And of course you could add that in later in the show, I guess. but I felt like this would have been a perfect time for it. And it would have kind of motivated his leaving the Citadel at that moment.
Right. And Sam is one of the only remaining interesting characters. Like it's funny. I still think of him as like a POV character, even though that's not how the show works, obviously. But like he is still lowly, and you know, he's definitely like better off than his book counterpart is. But he has more obvious kind of struggles in his life, and it just makes him a lot more interesting. And yet we spend, I don't know, I could definitely stand to spend more time with Sam and less time with, you know, John and Danny. So
personally, I think slightly off, but you know, I think it should have just been like his dad that gets killed by Danny or just Dragon. Like the fact that it was like his dad and brother, it just seemed kind of like just randomly placed there, and you know, but again, that's like way at the bottom of like the list of stuff that they care about.
Well, and there's all these people saying that Sam's going to become the Lord, which really doesn't make any sense because he's supposed to be a black brother still, so that doesn't make any sense.
Nope. You had no problem with Dickon. You could have kept him there as like a half extra, half minor character, and you know, whatever. Have them meet up and then be like, hey, sorry dad hated you. Oh yeah, it sucked, but at least I like, you know, met John and like, you know, blah blah this and that. But no, instead it's just like just took them both out and
see, that's a scene
Sam
I would
goes
not.
North.
That's a scene I don't want. I don't want them to, like, I don't think there's anything gained from them having a conversation.
I mean, there definitely isn't. That's obviously like reaching, but at the same time, like, what does it matter if they're not going to tell Sam? I mean, yeah, if anything, the worst example of this whole season, you know, is not mentioning Rickon once. That was just a complete
I know.
fail.
Like when Sansa and Arya are talking about how much they miss their father, I was like, what about your mom? What about Rob? What about Rickon? Why is no one talking about any of these people?
Yeah.
He may not as well exist in this story.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, they should have actually not. I don't know. I don't want to criticize things that were perfectly valid decisions at the time, probably. But like, you're right. They could have not had Rickon in this show, and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, that would have been hard to like know, but if that's the case, then that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the emotional, like a lot of the human elements that we got from the early seasons, regardless of whether they were adapted or not, even the ones that were separate, they left a lot of that. They just said screw over that, like, or they're just like disregard it. It's like, whatever, we don't have time for this. We need to move forward. And I'm sorry, but that makes a quality show. It flattens it out into just kind of meh.
I agree. And I've seen it described online. So my favorite description was, we're now in the end of an RPG where you're just teleporting around the world, hitting the main story beats. Like you've done all the side quests, and you're just like when you play Grand Theft Auto, when you're just going straight from main story quest to main story quest, and you're just like, okay, just get there, just get through it, and let's go. And that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So here's my general question for you before we move on to something else. What does John's parents being formally married matter at all?
Nothing. I mean, at least you could argue with Sam that like the Night's Watch probably isn't going to be a thing anymore after, you know, this story is over. So it's actually credible that he would be able to go back and like that could be his happy ending is, he gets to be Lord of Hornhill. Okay, that's nice. But John's going to be the king no matter what.
Right.
Already.
Yeah. And it's like,
doesn't matter.
But, and maybe in the books it would matter. Well, first of all, you have to argue whether the religion of this land would allow the annulment of a marriage that has already produced children, which, no, it wouldn't.
No.
But on top of that, like, we've established over and over again in the show that the line of succession in the show universe is not as important. We did with the Sand Snakes in Dorne. We did with Cersei becoming queen. We did with Jon becoming king in the North.
Bastard Jon, yep.
Like, the succession in the show universe is just not as important. So it being a formal marriage and him not being a bastard doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's and I get that it's a reveal for us, the audience, and that's a meaningful thing. And it's a meaningful thing to know that the entire start of this rebellion was based off of a lie. I get that. But that would have been true without them being formally married in a church under God and under the law of the land. Like, that just doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, who cares? Like, he's still half Targaryen, half Stark at this point. I think that's enough. I think it was just like a little Easter egg they gave Sam because he didn't have much to do this season. Yeah. I mean,
I also appreciate that we were intercutting between that reveal and uncle and nephew, or aunt and nephew, banging on a ship.
Banging it out.
Right. with music cues indicating we were supposed to be happy about this.
Right. It was just a really weird moment.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you guys are right. Like Preston Jacobs makes the point a lot. I mean, basically the idea is just like, there's probably some person in France who is like the rightful king of England by, if you were to trace their line back to some king who was deposed by some Norman king in 873. But like, that doesn't mean that they're gonna, like, doesn't mean they have a claim.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anybody's gonna be like, oh, you're right, this has all been a terrible mistake, we need to oust the royal family. Like, I mean, the whole point of the books, at least, is like, power resides where you think it resides. I mean, right. I think they even say that in the show, although they don't really pay much attention to it. So who cares what
they did at one point with Varys when he had stuff to do.
Yeah. Let me tell you what I think is going to be one of the biggest problems the show has going forward. The Night King is a boring bad guy. In a show that has had such good bad guys, like Joffrey is such a good bad guy, Cersei is such a good bad guy, Ramsay, it was such a good bad guy.
That javelin throw,
but he's so like, he's literally an emotionless, featureless
I know. Doesn't
guy.
Even know his face.
They don't even speak.
Yeah, they don't talk.
No one speaks. Like, we don't know what they want.
He has no motivation outside of symbol of ultimate evil, and and I believe that you could make him interesting. And I believe that I fully believe that the book is going to do something interesting with the others beyond just ultimate evil. But in the show universe, they are literally just a weapon of mass destruction that they've lost control of, that the Children of the Forest lost control of. So they are seemingly just ultimate evil. And that's boring. And it seems like that's why we leave Cersei in. Like, if we get rid of Cersei, if it's literally just Jon and Dany versus the Night King for 6 episodes next year or the year after that, whenever this is going to come out, there's going to be no like drama there. It's just going to be mindless CG war fighting for 6 hours or something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really disappointed by the fact that, I mean, because even before I found the Preston Jacobs YouTube channel where he kind of lays it all out in a way that's maximally compelling, it was kind of obvious that, like, first of all, the others are named the others because they're being cast kind of ironically as being the antithesis, or like the thing that people call the other so that they don't have to realize how similar you are to them.
Right.
And then also just the way the others behave clearly indicates some kind of like purpose that isn't just mindless destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's fairly likely that they're responding to what they perceive to be a violation of some treaty rather than just being an aggressor. So it's just really disappointing that the show is going this route.
It's funny, as the wall came down at the end of this episode, my wife turns to me and goes, "Are we sure that the White Walkers are the bad guys?" And she's like, "Maybe they're just going south for the winter." And I was like, funny you should say that, because that's a very popular theory in the books. But I think in the show universe, no, they're just literally aggressing evil that we have to kill.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. But
I guess we'll find out. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, we know their background, we know their origin, we know that they're just a weapon. So
yeah. So
guys, when I was watching the 10-second like little sequence of like the ice dragon burning down the wall, The only thing I can think of was like, man, this would be a perfect clip for like an Icy Hot commercial. Like, this is you putting Icy Hot after sports, and like, this is you feeling great after. And it's like, I mean, it was quite a scene. It was
a very good way to end the season, and
just called it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was a very good way to end the season. I don't, and I guess we should, as we go to wrap up, where do you think the show goes from now? What is there left to do? Because we have 6 episodes left. They're probably not coming next year from everything we say. It could be 2019 before the 3 of us get together again to discuss this show. But we're down to 6 episodes. The rumor is they're going to be an hour and a half each. So we're at the home stretch here. But what is there to do at this point? The army is obviously across the wall. They're here. They're marching. This is an army that doesn't sleep, that doesn't need to stop and rest. So they can very easily just I don't know time-wise when the wall fell to when Dany and her army were moving north, but is it just going to be battles for 6 episodes? I don't know what there's left to do at this point.
I mean, I was off by a whole season in terms of the wall falling, and I think when it didn't fall last season, it really, or maybe just the way last season kind of started and progressed, it really kind of threw off what I thought we were leading towards. I thought that would have been done already at this point. So with this season that came in, because it just really not a whole lot happened. I think it's just, I mean, there's probably 10 different completely routes they can go, but I just don't know what else they can do with kind of the way this season ended, in terms of originality or, making it to where it's not just a good versus evil. I don't know if they have the time or the resources to care about something that to set something like that up. I mean, I guess Cersei continuing to be this devious bitch or whatever is I feel like it's just kind of extending the inevitable. I mean, she's probably going to fuck up somehow, and the whole Bravos thing isn't going to work out, and Jaime's going to, I guess one of the brothers is going to end up killing her after all. But I have no clue on the setup. I mean, if y'all have any suggestions.
Well, here's the things that I think still needs to happen. We obviously have to have the Cleganes fight each other still. They reinforced that this episode to make it seem like that is definitely going to happen. So I think that's
Clegane Bowl tease.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to need to happen. I think Jaime has to kill Cersei. Someone's killing Cersei. It's going to be Jaime or Tyrion, and it seems so obvious for it to be Tyrion because that's what she's thought her entire life. So I think it's going to be Jaime. We have to have the final battle, which I mean could take an entire episode by itself. Or do you think they're going to throw a curveball and have the final battle be episode 3, and then we have this 3 episode Shire scourging thing like Lord of the Rings did? You think that's something this show would do? I don't know.
Unfortunately, it might.
So the two places that are pretty central to the story that haven't really gotten any time, one in a long time, is Harrenhal. That's pretty far south.
Yeah, I don't think the writers remember what that is.
What Harrenhal is, yeah. Well, and the other thing was Moat Cailin, right? But the fact is so many different characters or groups or whatever have crossed at this point. At least we think, or maybe just sailing, or I don't know, whatever the teleporting is. So I would think that maybe Moat Cailin would be a really cool place for a final battle if they were able to not make it continuous. To where it was an actual single event. It could be pretty neat. But yeah, now that you mentioned that, Scott, I guess that it's very possible that they forgot just about everything in terms of the places that we haven't seen, or
it feels like
potential settings.
If you're going to design
Winterfell, I guess
it feels like if you're going to design a final confrontation, it's going to be at Winterfell or it's going to be at King's Landing, and it makes more sense for it to be at King's Landing. Yes. What I think. My general guess, and I'm not letting you talk, Matt, but my general guess is the armies of Dany and Jon are going to move north, are going to confront the Night King, are going to lose, be pushed back. They're going to be on the run, being pushed back, and they're going to get to King's Landing, where there's going to be an army of gold cloaks waiting for them. They're going to fight maybe, and then maybe the Night King arrives as they're fighting, and then it's going to be 3 armies fighting each other at the same time. I don't know how it's going to end, but it ends with Dany sitting on the Iron Throne. Isn't there like an image that Bran had of Dany sitting on like a burnt, charred throne room with snow falling down on the Iron Throne? Isn't that something we've seen in the show?
That was in the House of the Undying, and when Dany was in it, one of the scenes was like the throne room that was like buried in snow, pretty much.
Yeah,
and like the ceiling was burned out or something.
It was burned down. Yeah, it was like all like busted.
So I feel like I feel like King's Landing, in a show called Game of Thrones, where it seems to be all about who is going to end up on this throne, it's going to be that's where the battle's going to happen. Cersei, Dany, Night King, all there fighting at the end. How that's going to work out, I have no idea. But
yeah, I'm going to go ahead and predict that Jon's not going to make it.
I think you're probably right. Yeah,
he's going to knock Dany up.
Yeah, he served his purpose. He served his purpose now by having sex with Dany.
Which was what. Yeah, that was what.
So episode
that was what,
3, basically.
Yeah.
That was all R'hllor wanted.
So I have this really funny, like, can you imagine when they get to Winterfell and Sam and Bran are waiting there to tell him this very important information, and Jon and Dany walk in like holding hands, and Jon is like, Sam, I want you to meet my wife. and he's like, God. Ew.
Do you know about the Targaryen thing, how they used to marry each other? Yeah.
And of course, Bran will just tell him, because Bran has become this flat, emotionless, terrible character.
Yeah. Terrible version of an oracle or whatever the fuck he is at this point.
Yeah. I'm tempted to guess that Rhaegal is also not going to last long, because having 2 dragons versus basically them having the 2 dragons is still too much firepower when one side has no dragon and the other side has one ice dragon thing.
Well, you have to assume that Jon will be writing on Rhaegal at some point, because it's too poetic to not do.
Although I would kind of like a random like twist with like a slight reference to the because they're obviously not going like the Tyrion theory as possibly being, because I still believe in this in the books. Him being like a half Targaryen. I think it'd be hilarious for him to actually build like his little saddle onto Rhaegal and like fly him, and Rhaegal like goes down, and everyone thinks Tyrion's dead, but he like fell in the lake or something. That's why I think Harrenhal would have been so good for like something like this, but yeah, they're not. They're just gonna forget about it.
No,
so.
I mean, the viewers have forgotten that. I mean, it's not it's not a bad decision on their part, because like if they were like, it will be at Harrenhal, like 80% of the viewers are gonna be like, what?
What's the God's Eye?
What's that place? Where's that? Yeah,
right. We know the places you've shoved down our throats on the intro screen song thing every single day or every single episode. That's all we know.
Hey, where's Edmure Tully? Where's he at?
Jamie, like, I guess, was it last season? They sent him,
he sent him to Casterly Rock, which was occupied by.
Oh, that's right.
So I have no idea what happened there.
That was another very quick movement that occurred in this last episode.
Yeah. That confused the hell out of me.
Oh God!
And how are the Unsullied
like,
there?
Ending up on the other side already, like ending back up in King's Landing.
So there's
I thought they were like under siege.
There's one. I mean, my guess is the ships pulled away and they just walked across the entirety of Westeros to get over there. That's like, there's a hint. There's a throwaway line, like, at some point that says that they'd have to walk to get back. They'd have to walk all the way across Westeros. And I guess we're supposed to assume that that's what they did, that they, the siege was lifted for a reason, and they just left a small force at Casterly Rock and then just took their entire army east. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of predictions, I was trying to go through all the characters, and I'm like, unfortunately, my actual prediction is nothing is going to happen with most of the characters. Like, I think Bran is going to sit around and maybe like have visions every once in a while that give us information that is expository. But like, I don't think his character is going to get much of a resolution. I want to think that Arya is going to like meaningfully grow. Like I don't want her to just like, oh, she gets to kill one more person on her list.
She's gonna kill a White Walker. I mean, like that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
She's gonna kill a White Walker with her fancy new blade.
It's just gonna be a badass, like because what I feel like what we are expecting in the book is that she's gonna kill someone that we really don't want her to kill because she's so unhinged and she's just like going down her list.
Because that would show that actions have consequences.
Yeah,
but not actually fully kill her, but almost kill her. That's in the book though, and I was actually thinking like she was going to kill Cersei, but I guess if Cersei's pregnant now, maybe she's still going to try to kill Cersei. Cersei's on her list.
Here's Cersei's either not really pregnant, or I don't think that pregnancy is going to make it, because Cersei has now lost Jaime. So I think we're really getting to a point where Cersei is going full crazy unhinged Cersei that she's been in the book for a while now.
Yeah, my new roommate is agreed with Matt, basically saying that, or whichever one of you said that it was bullshit, it was a lie, and she's definitely not pregnant.
I think she's really pregnant, but I think she's going to lose it.
So if she is pregnant, would it be possible that technically Jaime still kills her in that she like dies in childbirth?
I think that's overthinking the show, but
just if we have nine months of waiting or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. But that would not definitely wouldn't fit the narrative. Yeah, I would guess she probably loses it. That sounds about right.
Sam still hasn't been a wizard yet. So.
Yeah, that's true.
So either that's just dropped entirely, or he's gonna find something useful in the books.
Yeah, because like if he doesn't find anything else useful in the books, then the entire purpose of Sam in Old Town was to find that there's dragon glass at Dragonstone, which is something that we already knew because Stannis told them that when he was up there.
Right. So can we talk about something? Because I feel like I had a very clear read on a certain scene, and I've realized that no one in the world shares this read with me.
Okay.
But basically it was the guy, the Grand Maester who he was palling around with, who is not Marwyn. But I'm going to call him Marwyn because I don't remember what his name was.
I know who you're talking about, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like
Professor Slughorn?
Yeah, Professor Slughorn. To me, I read him as being sinister and deceptive, and like my read on him is that he knows that the White Walkers are there and that it's real and that it should be taken seriously. And for some secret maesterly reason, is being cagey and is being like, yeah, well, we'll send a raven and get verification. And he's basically stalling. And I don't know. Part of me is like, well, the show actually isn't going for this level of subtlety, because like in the books, the Maesters do have various conspiracies that like we know that the Maesters probably killed the dragons in the first place,
right?
Like by poisoning them and stuff. No hint of that in the show. So I don't know. I'm just like, did you guys pick up any of this stuff that I'm talking about?
I definitely got the same vibe actually that you got, and if anything, that he definitely knew way more than what he was letting on. Like, what's the point of kind of putting him in there? It's just,
I'm gonna say no.
I mean, was it really just to like show like Sam and these montages of like doing hard work and it's somehow paying off?
I think the point was to show that the Maesters are a group of pompous, educated assholes that aren't interested in helping in any kind of real way, which is definitely a change from how they are in the books. But I don't think there's too like the show does not play
up the Maesters in general.
The show does not play in subtlety. Like it just doesn't do it. Like every time weird stuff happens in the show and we start trying to speculate what it means. Like last year with Arya and all the weird shit that was happening with Arya, and we're like, oh well, what if she's actually the waif and that's actually Jock and Hagar? And no, it just turns out no, it just didn't make sense. And that's just what this show is. So it's just too much that. As much as I'd like your theory to be true, Matt, there's just too much subtlety involved that it's just no.
No, I agree that it's mostly wishful thinking, especially since there's been no other like foreshadowing of that. The
he
closest
definitely
thing
is off though. I mean, he's
Yeah.
definitely something.
I think you're
mean,
just
I don't
not
know,
supposed
feel
to
he
like
could be
him.
in the
I think
next season.
I think you're just not supposed to like him. You're just supposed to be annoyed by him generally.
Yeah.
And also that actor, I'm used to him being that exact character of like, oh, I'm just a cantankerous old man, and then he's actually the serial killer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So, did we pretty much hit on all the characters?
I think we did. The only thing we didn't really talk about, I guess we did talk about how much Bran sucks now.
Yeah.
Um,
WTF, Bran?
and there's all the side characters. Like, I just like they brought back Gendry, and then he disappeared again. Like he's not in this episode. So they literally brought him back to go north.
I was gonna ask you guys where was he?
I have no idea. And that's like, it really felt to me like we gathered all these characters together to go on this ranging in the north, and we're going to use this as an opportunity to kill off a bunch of them in a way that is seemingly meaningful. So it ties up characters, it ties up loose ends, and like pumps up stakes because it's like, oh my god, these people are dying and these people are dying. But no, we just killed off Thoros, who we show-wise we barely knew. And then everyone else survives. Gendry is somewhere. I mean, I'm sure he'll be there in the final battle with his hammer, I guess. I don't know.
They lost 3 of their 2 extras.
Yeah.
Taking after his old pop, bringing out that Warhammer.
Did you? I thought the Warhammer like looked like not good prop work. Like it looked fake to me. It didn't look heavy.
I think that's because it wasn't. And yeah, I mean he lifted it too easily.
They're supposed to be like, I feel like a little thinner in the way they actually look. Like the headpiece, it looked like almost like out of like Warcraft.
Yeah, that's what it was. It looked like a Warcraft weapon. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guarantee like a piece of iron that big would probably weigh like 70 to 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And he's just like hefting it with one hand held out to the side.
He would have had to have had like a mace or something smaller, I think. Like Robert was a huge. Like he wielded that thing because he was a monster.
Yeah.
But I just want to give a little mini shout out to my friend Jonathan, who had the pretty cool idea of like, them actually being able to do the whites attacking them on that island if they had just allowed. I know Thoros was dead, but like just have Beric, when he like lights his sword on fire, just like spread it to all their other weapons, and then they could have actually burned the friggin' zombies. And it would have made a little sense, but instead they completely broke what is what, and that's that.
I guess you're just supposed to think everyone's using dragon glass weapons now.
I know it's like, I mean, Jorah had the daggers, and someone said that like Tormund had like an axe or something, or one of them had an axe.
I missed it, but someone said that. Yeah,
I missed it. Yeah.
And by the way, Gentry, it's funny to me that I'm only realizing this now after having been familiar with the story forever, but you're exactly right that like a real historical Warhammer is like basically looks kind of like a halberd. It's like a thin pole with a lump of metal on the end that's mainly actually like for piercing.
Yeah.
Yep. That's like actually what Robert had. And that's like he basically caved in Rhaegar's chest with that thing.
Yeah.
So what Gendry had was just kind of like, hey, is he an orc? What's going on?
Right. Exactly. There was no point in history where people use weapons like that. So that's funny.
And now he's gone again.
And so like I guess the dumbest thing in the show to me, in the entire show, was still them trapped on that stupid lake for whoever knows how many days. And,
for 1 to 5 days.
Yeah, and I guess what we're gonna say at the end of the day is the way we're gonna explain this away is that the Night King knew all this was going to happen, and all this was a really complicated plan to get the dragon up north so he could kill it, which is ridiculous, but I guess it's the only way it makes sense. And you could even argue then that the images that the Hound saw in the fire might not have even been R'hllor, and that's just the Night King making him see the mountain so he would come too, and it's like how far into this are we going to go? And again, I think that we're overcomplicating the show, which
right. Because if it were the books, then I would say absolutely, because the theory that, once again, Preston Jacobs' theory that I think is probably accurate is that there is no R'hllor. There's just various people who are sending each other like deceitful or manipulative telepathic messages through various means. And if the Hound indeed does get a message to go north, then it's going to be because like Bran or the Night King or somebody else wants him to.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, but not in show world. So I think that's it. Unless either of you had anything else you wanted to say. It's tough because like we've been super negative, but I think fairly, and I think at the end of the day, I mostly still enjoy watching this show. And I think Matt, your summary of it is perfect. I like the parts of the show that aren't stupid, but there are more and more stupid parts each season. But this is it. We've got 6 episodes left.
I'm definitely always like, if people ask me, 10 years from now or whatever, should I watch this? Because there will be people that kind of come across this way late in the game, and I'm always going to appreciate especially the first 2 seasons. I think compared, I guess maybe it's just kind of like compared to what's kind of come across these last couple, it really makes me appreciate how well they did those and how much care they actually put into them.
Yeah.
Even though there was some stuff that was maybe a little choppy at times, or maybe just kind of random. So I keep using the word fun because sure, it is fun. I mean, it's just like, okay, whatever. I can turn off my brain even more so now than ever and just kick back and watch some, icy hot dragons come south, and there's just going to be more of the same thing. But it'd be cool if they surprised me in the last season, and it was executed really well in these last 6 larger episodes. But I don't know what they can potentially do at this point that's going to be, that can really throw everybody for a loop and actually still come out like very high quality.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I still think I'm gonna buy the box set of this shit when it comes out. I'm gonna do that. I know I'm gonna do that. And it's looking more and more like this is gonna be the only way we get to see the end of this story. So
no.
Oh, are you really? When is Winter gonna come out, Gentry? When's that gonna happen? Is it gonna be next year? No, it's not gonna be next year.
We're getting the first Targaryen part 1 by 2018 or by at least 2019. So at least he's still writing.
Yeah. And look, like
it's going to take time.
I hate the people that say George owes us this and he must give us this book.
Nah, I'll never be on that side. I can never be on the impatient side.
He doesn't owe us shit.
He's given us so much. There's tons of stuff I haven't even read yet.
Yeah.
That he's written. So yeah, it's going to blow, obviously, if it doesn't work out, if he gets to, I have a hard time thinking he's going to just let everybody down and just not, barring some kind of like health thing. I just have a hard time thinking he's not going to complete at least Winds of Winter, because he really has. I mean, I would say if anything, it's a high percentage completion, or at least enough manuscript to definitely make a book. It's just making sure it works. But yeah, I mean, it's past the time between Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons at this point.
Well, my hope was that he was watching the show and getting so frustrated by what he's seeing on the show that it was encouraging him to say, okay, I have to tell my version of the story. Yeah. But now I learned that he doesn't even watch the show anymore. So that dream is gone.
I heard that was a rumor, though. I heard that he was like,
he said in an interview, he said, I don't have time to watch the show. I haven't been watching it.
Oh, okay. See, I thought that was like that people had said that, he basically that. And it was like, well, he was in Europe, so he didn't have time. And then he came out and said, hold up, I am going to watch it. I just haven't watched this season yet, or something like that. So, yeah. But yeah, I'd be very interested to kind of hear his thoughts on what's been going on.
Somebody made a show like this about something I wrote. I would either be really excited to watch it and make sure to watch it as soon as it came out, or I would avoid the hell out of it because I was mortified.
Yeah. I think he's actually in a pretty good position now, because he can wait till this all dies down. He can wait till season 8 comes out. Game of Thrones is done, and then he has no time pressure. He can write the book. He can tell his story the way he wants it. Everyone's seen how it ends, so there's less pressure on him. And I think that's what he's
again, I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with that, because I don't care how long it takes. I want his quality writing. I want what got me to fall in love with this in the first place. The show is its own thing and has been for a long time now. So yeah, it's time for that to end. And I would rather them not do a spinoff, but obviously that's going to happen. So if anything, it's just like, yeah,
Not
more
just
laughs.
one.
And really,
Well, there's 5 in pre-production right now.
you're kidding.
And I think
me.
they're just gonna see which one works the best and start with that one. But yeah, they're gonna be making shows in this world until you're dead and beyond.
Okay, I'm gonna go cry myself to sleep now. I mean, I can appreciate that it's at least HBO, but that doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence anymore.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I mean,
once they're unhooked from this particular story,
yeah,
they might actually find something pretty
If they
good.
could-
yeah, we said that
up,
about
I think
Star
maybe
Wars, Matt, and look what happened.
That's true, but this is HBO. This isn't Disney.
Dunk and Egg, I think they really could actually, with some good writing, like pull that off, just because of the fact that there really is no dragons. There's no like supernatural kind of things happening.
Yeah.
For the most part, but at the same time, that's still asking a lot.
And those stories were okay, but they weren't like the best. I don't know. They were the best thing ever.
I've never read them.
I would just want more. I mean, that's for the Dunk and Egg, it's not as it's not like in the same form of writing, obviously, but they're still like very interesting.
Yeah, I
stories.
liked one of them a lot.
You get a lot of the Targaryen politics, which I think is fun to see, especially since we don't really get a lot of that in this story.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we need to wrap this thing up now. So
Let's do it.
So that's it. Game of Thrones season 7 over. We will meet again in 2 years. I don't know how long this thing's going to take to come out, or maybe we'll meet again to talk about the book before season 8, right, Gentry? Right, because the book's going to come out, right?
Totally.
No,
here
it's
this
not.
time next year.
Yeah, it's not gonna come.
Schedule the book club for that book for sometime in late 2027.
All right. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to go down the list and talk about what we've been watching or reading or doing. And Gentry, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I haven't really been watching much of anything other than just the news and boring stuff. But I have been reading this really awesome web serial that I heard about.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah, it's this book that's like extremely long and was written over a long period of time, and it's this really like realistic take on superheroes and supervillains.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't really
obviously,
sound like I would like that.
Thanks to you two guys. Yeah, I've been kind of buried in the Worm web serial. So is this pretty much a shameless plug for my buddies? Absolutely. But no, in all seriousness, I really didn't think I would love anything as much as the Song of Ice and Fire story, or really just that whole world. And this, if Martin's work is 1 in my book, this is like a 1.2. I've been incredibly impressed with what Wildbow's done, and I am absolutely hooked. And it's kind of embarrassing, but all I can think about is just trying to catch up to where you guys are. And I'm slowly making progress. But
that's great.
I mean, just in case anybody listening to this hasn't jumped on that train, I highly advise you to do it. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I've been doing, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks to you guys.
as you read, you can follow along with our amazing podcast called We've Got Worm, where Matt and I go through each arc week by week and talk about it in insane detail, 2 to 2.5 hours per episode detail, and it's been a lot of fun. We're over halfway done now. It's crazy.
Yeah. This project has certainly become something more than I could have ever hoped, honestly.
I know. It's incredible. I love it.
Yeah.
And,
you guys have done an excellent job on the pod, and if anything, it's like a fantastic combination. So not only my reading, but I am following along on the podcast as I finish each arc. And so, yeah.
I apologize
yourself, Matt?
on behalf of Matt for anything he said. It's been so long that I don't remember a lot of those old episodes now. So
yeah, I've found that I'll repeat myself. I'll repeat things that I said a long time ago.
So, yeah, people are like, once this project's done, there's going to be people that go back and binge through our episodes that are like, you guys say the same thing 7 times.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah. Oh well, that's
Anyway.
predictable.
Anyway, Matt, what have you been watching?
Really the only thing recently was I watched the Conor McGregor Mayweather fight last night on at some friend's house, and it was fun. I really wanted Conor to win.
You knew that wasn't going to happen.
I always root for the underdog, though.
Yeah,
I always root for the underdog, and I figured that if he got in a good enough hit in the early rounds when he still had his energy, if he rocked Mayweather and put him off his game, then that could have made the difference. But that didn't happen, and probably never could have happened. I mean, he got some good licks in, but they weren't enough. And I guess I'm not surprised that he did a good job. Some people are surprised that he even did as well as he did. I'm like, come on, the guy has the psychology of a warrior. He's gonna do fine. Yeah, I don't think anybody was surprised that he didn't win.
No, but they both got a shit ton of money.
Yep, they basically made like $500 million between them.
Jesus Christ.
And I liked that. I don't know if you guys watched any of it, but like immediately after the fight, after all the shit talking, prior to the fight, immediately after the fight, they like smilingly are like shaking hands and like telling each other like how impressive the other person was and like how proud they were to fight them and stuff like that.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was super like heartwarming, especially after all the lead up to it.
Almost like that was all just theater and they just wanted to make some money.
Right, exactly.
I heard McGregor did pretty well. He just got gassed. I didn't get to watch it, but
yeah, I didn't watch it either.
Yeah, I mean it's cool that he put up a little bit. At least
he got gassed. Yeah. After like 9 rounds, though. I mean, he was fine until literally nine rounds into it. So yeah.
All right. I watched Death Note, the Netflix remake of the anime that Matt made me watch about a year ago now.
And you're glad I did.
Yeah. It was certainly better than this Netflix adaptation. That's for damn sure. They basically tried to compress what is probably like 80 hours of content into a 90-minute movie. And it's bad. It's really bad. It kind of misses the point. Like, like a lot of people are talking about whitewashing. I don't think it's whitewashing. They took this Japanese story and they moved it over to America and they put it in modern day America. But they also it's kind of a very uniquely Japanese story still, because the main character is like a commentary on because isn't Light Matt an asshole before he gets the book? Isn't that like part of his whole thing? Is that like he's like, but everyone loves him for it because he's the top student. And he's the best, so people respect him for it. But
right, he's this aloof, like elitist person who thinks he is better and knows better than everyone.
Yeah,
and that the world is full of imperfection, and then of course once he gets this book, he very quickly decides that it's his duty, and he was chosen, and he was meant to be the one to purify the world. And I mean, he's super super interesting, like flawed, tragic, I don't know if you wouldn't call him a tragic hero, but a tragic character. Yeah.
Well, that's not this. So for those of you that don't know, the concept is a kid gets a book where you write someone's name in the book and they die. It's called a Death Note. And he basically uses it to start killing all these criminals in the world. And then this really smart detective gets on his trail, and it's like them kind of doing mental battling to trying to outsmart each other. That's, again, not what this movie is at all. Light in the movie is this, I guess they tried to show he was smart by like the fact that he's doing other people's homework for them and getting money for it. And then he's kind of like made fun of and pushed around, and his a criminal killed his mother. And so he wants revenge from that criminal, and that kind of feeds his need to take revenge out on all the criminals in the world. And it's just a thin, not very exciting adaptation that ruins everything that was interesting about the anime. And that's coming from a person who does not like anime. So the fact that they took this and removed every interesting bit of it is just a bummer. It's just a big bummer. And the ending is so stupid. It's so dumb. Don't bother watching this movie.
Wow.
I won't.
All right. That's it. That's going to do it for us this week. I'm not sure what we're doing next week. I'll probably have Michael back to talk about some movies, but I don't know which movies because there's nothing good coming out in the theaters, but we'll figure something out. We'll be back next Monday, and we're going to have some fun.
All right. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else that podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here, consider heading on over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/Daly Planet Films. That's DALY. And donate a buck or whatever else can you afford. Every dollar we get goes towards making more shows, doing more stuff, and continuing the stuff that we like. So that'd be awesome if you could help us out there.
Yeah, thanks.
And
sorry, and finally, if you're listening on iTunes, please take a moment to rate and review us and help new people discover our podcast.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And Gentry, thank you so much for joining us this week. Maester Gentry, you're always fun to have on the podcast and talk about Game of Thrones. Where can you be found on the internet?
Yeah, guys, thanks a lot for having me. I can be found on pretty much just Twitter. It's just Wench Tweet, all one word, at Wench Tweet. And yep, that's pretty much it.
All right, Matt, how about you? Twitter me.
I tweet at More Than a Mail.
All right, I am at ScottDaly85. That's DALY. You can find this podcast and everything else we do, like that We've Got Worm podcast that Gentry shamelessly plugged, at dalyplanetfilms.com. So head on over there for all our content. Gentry, thanks again. This was a lot of fun. And
absolutely, guys.
Yeah,
we'll close it up when it finishes.
Yeah, in like 3 years or 2 years, however long it's going to be. But we'll be back to talk about Game of Thrones Season 8 whenever that happens. But until now, we'll see you all next week.
Podcast is over, it's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school, maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday.